What's going on, guys? Charles Weinraub, AKA the Handsome Homebuyer, and on this week's educational vlog, we are going to talk about what is more profitable, single-family rentals or apartment buildings. All right, so essentially, Carl Chavone, my mentor, has told me from day one, he's like, Charles, there is nothing more profitable in real estate than single-family homes. And at first I didn't believe that. When I first got into real estate, I wanted to do like value-add apartment buildings, you know, big dollars, sexy, lots of units. But as I got into real estate more and more, and I bought my first single-family rental, I realized, like everything else, is that Carl is right. So I'm gonna weigh in up front right here, then I'm gonna talk about the pros and cons. We're gonna dig into the difference between single-family and apartment buildings. But in my opinion, there is nothing more profitable in real estate from a rental standpoint than single-family homes. So let's go across and talk about the pros and the cons, single-family and apartment buildings. So the cool thing about single-family is a lower entry point. You could buy houses in certain markets for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, where apartment buildings are significantly more expensive. You know, that's a fact, all right? They're easy to finance. Right, you can get, now it's becoming even easier. You have a lot of like portfolio type of lenders that are national, that'll lend at pretty decent rates, slightly higher than commercial, but they'll lend at pretty decent rates. They'll give you 30-year fixed paper. They will do interest-only loans as well. So the financing has gotten a lot better. It used to be a lot harder, and that's why people went to commercial, because you could only put it in your name and then it would get sold to the government, like a regular kind of FHAS type of Fannie Freddie loan. And they basically cap you with the amount of mortgages you can put in your personal name. Now that's no longer an issue. You can go to one of these portfolio lenders. Let's say you're paying a half a point to a point higher, depending on your leverage and your credit, but ultimately you can still get very good financing terms. Okay? They're easy to sell, right? It's not like an apartment building. If you have one house, you could sell it. You could sell it as a rental. You could also sell it as just a house for someone to live in. One shot, one deal. This way, listen, let's say you bought, there's a difference between having a 10-unit apartment building and having 10 single-family rentals. You can't peel off a unit or two if you need liquidity to send your kid to college or do whatever, but you can sell a home or two or three. It depends. And again, however it performs best, whether that be as a standalone home for someone to live in or as a rental, that's the money you can command when you sell it. More desirable. So from a landlord standpoint or a tenant standpoint, you're seeing a lot of these REITs open up. Blackstone had one, there's a couple others that have 30, 40, 50, 60,000 single family homes across the United States. Right now it's really hot down in Florida, you know, different areas of the Sun Belt, Texas, etc. But people tend to stay as tenants in single family homes for a lot longer than apartment buildings, especially now with COVID. People are fleeing apartments, they don't want to be at elevators, they don't want to be crammed, they don't want to be next to each other. Single family homes is trending much more favorably for tenants across the country. Again, brings us back to longer tenancy. They stay longer. There's more of a pride of home ownership because it is a house. It's just a psychological thing. Now, there are pros to apartment buildings. So apartment buildings, in a certain sense, are easier to finance. I mean, you can get 30-year terms here. Sometimes you can get 30-year terms here, but it's typically 25 or 20-year terms. Obviously, every major bank loves this kind of stuff. You know, the rates are very low. You know, cap rates are lower as well. So, you know, sometimes you get an increased value because of those things. The old, you know, one roof, one boiler type of thing. If you have 10 single family homes, you know, what's the management of that? You have one roof, one boiler, you can have one maintenance person, you're going to check on one property, and that's it. That's an argument that has validity to it also. Easier to manage, like I was saying before. If you're just going to one place, as opposed to going to 10 places spread out all over, it's a lot easier, it's a lot less expensive, it takes a lot less time. So now let's get into the cons of each, and then I'm gonna again weigh in and explain why I feel single family homes are better. So cons of both. Obviously there's pros and cons to everything. So cons for single family are management. Obviously it's definitely more management intensive to go to 10 different houses, 10 different roofs, all that, versus one roof, one building. That makes sense and it's fair. Vacancy. If you have a single family house and it's vacant, it's vacant. There's no money coming in. It is vacant. You are burning money every single month. That is true. Financing. It used to be tougher to finance these things. This is like a half. I put it up there because it makes sense to mention it, but it's really no more. Your interest rate is going to be higher, yes. So that, I guess, is a con. But there are a lot more financing options out there because there's a ton of money sloshing around that people are looking to put to work, and there's not enough vehicles to do that. Cons of apartment buildings, pretty simple. Not as liquid. It's not as easy to sell an apartment building typically as it is to sell a house as far as speed goes. All right, it's all or nothing, meaning if you have a 10-unit building and you're worth $1 million and you really just want like $100,000 or $200,000 in certain cases, you can't do that. You can't peel off a couple of units and keep the 8 family. You have to sell the entire thing. So 10 units are going. It's harder to find a deal in the sense that once you start getting into bigger apartment buildings, there's a lot of institutional money or big players that are chasing these type of deals. As compared to single family homes, I feel it's easier to get deals. And it's obviously more expensive. A 10-unit apartment building or a 20-unit apartment building or even a 6-unit apartment building is going to be more expensive than buying one single family home. So obviously the barriers to entry are tougher depending on how much liquid capital you have, how much money you can raise, and ultimately what your level of education and skill set is to come up with a creative option. So I said it before, I'm gonna say it again, why I think single family make the best rentals. So obviously that's what I believe. Again, there's pros and cons to anything, but this is the reasons why I think single family rentals make the best investments in real estate, especially today. So they're easy to acquire, like I said. Long Island has tens and tens of thousands of houses all over the place in different conditions. Obviously you have to market, reference some of my other videos for that to get the deals in, but the deals are there and it's easier, all right? It's a lower price point. Again, like I said, you can go out and you can buy a house in a place like Mastic or Bellport or whatever for $100,000, $150,000, $200,000, which in this market is inexpensive. In other places, you could buy houses for $5,000 and $10,000 and $20,000 and $50,000, which is a lot more affordable. They're a lot more flexible. Like I said, if you want to sell a house or two, you could do that. You can't peel off a couple units from an apartment building. Okay? Longer tenancies. Statistically, people have a pride of home ownership when living in a single family house, so they treat them better than apartments and they tend to stay there longer. Especially if you're getting into now, you know, the Section 8 CDC, DSS type of model. Tenants that are CDC or Section 8 tend to stay for over 11 years. It's 11 and a half years out here are the stats last time I heard. You know, now it's easy to finance. Before it was more difficult to finance. Now financing is super readily available. You can package these things up, put a blanket mortgage across all of them. They treat them as if they're an apartment building or a portfolio. Like that brings me to the next one, which is they act as a portfolio. What people say to me is, hey, you know, I don't want to, if one of them is vacant, then I'm not getting any money. Yes, but if you have 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 or 1,000 of these things, it's the same thing in theory as having an apartment building. If you have 10 units, 10 houses, that's a 10-unit apartment building. If one of them is vacant, you have a vacant unit, right? So it's different. It's different than you have like, you know, just 1 or 2. If you're planning on doing these and buying a bunch of them, it basically acts as a multifamily building. All right, it is trending right now. COVID, people are leaving major cities. Before everybody was going to major cities, apartment buildings had, you know, very low cap rates, very expensive. Everybody wanted to be in a metropolitan area. Now they don't, and for the foreseeable future, they're not going to want to be. They want to be out, they want to be in suburban world, especially now with, you know, the internet and people being able to work from home. People want to live a different type of lifestyle that doesn't necessarily, they don't have to be in cities crammed in apartment buildings anymore. So for the foreseeable future, the trend is going to be more suburban, more single family homes. So take advantage of that and ride that wave. And the biggest thing, in my opinion, is massive ROIs from the value add that I do not believe that you can get in the apartment world. And let me give you an example of that. I bought a property a few years back online on one of the online auction sites. It was actually hubzoo.com. I bought a property in Patchogue for $70,000 that had people in it. I put $20,000 into it. I ended up turning those people into tenants. The bank came in at that time and appraised the property, and they appraised the property for $260,000. So that is, I basically doubled my equity right there off the bat. And then today, that property, about 4 years later, that property is worth about $450,000. So off of $70,000 plus $20,000, call another 10, you're in for $100,000 altogether. You had an initial appraised value of $260,000, $160,000 in equity. And then now that property today with minimum repair and maintenance is worth $450,000 because the market in that area has exploded. But take out the appreciation and just go straight addition of value just by being in the right place at the right time and making that actual buy. You could never, ever, ever purchase an apartment building, in my opinion, and get that kind of return right out the gate. It's absolutely massive. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. Obviously, like, subscribe, leave a comment below. If there's anything you want me to rant on or teach a lesson on within the real estate field, we're happy to do it. Just leave it in the comments and we'll bust it out next week. Thank you. We'll see you on next week's educational vlog episode.